John came into, and Irma came into my life when I met Debbie in 1996. And they came into my life, and then they were a permanent fixture in it. Particularly in 2004 when they moved to Salmon Arm. And we spent so much time together, and we watched all the Riders games with one small proviso I'll get to, and the baseball games and the Super Bowls and so on. And John, I had a wonderful father myself, and he passed in 2006. And before then and after, John was a father figure to me, and at the same time a best friend. And we easily could talk to John about anything, and I think he to me as well. And we spent a lot of our time together, and I'll always treasure that. He would call me before the games, and we would talk over trades and who would be coming, and I would always print off the Riders roster for him to take down, and we'd talk about the changes that had occurred to it. But the one proviso was that, well, my family came from Saskatchewan, so he knew my mom and dad, or they knew my mom and dad, and we all spoke the same language. We were all from the prairie, but we'd been in BC long enough, I'd become a Lions fan. So, but I can proudly say that I'm a Riders fan as well. And of late, the Riders come first, actually. Not too happy with the team in BC, so he and I wouldn't watch the Riders-Lions game sometimes because I would think that he got very upset around certain rulings and so on. The other thing is we go over for dinner, and Irma was a very effective person at praying, I believe, and the evidence was they had a large, healthy, and prosperous family, so her prayer must be successful. So what reminded me today of it when Debbie's Aunt Dot said that she was praying at the last Riders game for a turnaround, and sure enough, in a short time later, the Riders came back. It made me think that when we would be having dinner before watching the game, Irma would always add a prayer for the Riders in the upcoming game, and I think, hey, hold on, you know, it's a bit of an unfair advantage. But I became John's go-to guy for anything electronic. So he would often call and say, Alan, I've got a problem with the TV. If there's a time in the next little while you could come by. And I would say, you mean like right now, John? Yeah, that'd work. So I would go over and fix it up, whatever the problem was. And one day he called and he said, Alan, I want to have one of those smart TVs. And I said, oh, okay, John, they work with the internet though. Yeah, I want one of those smart TVs. And I said, well, John, you don't have the internet. No, it doesn't matter. I have to have a smart TV. And so we got one and set it up for him and watched many games with him on it. And another memory that comes to mind is how patient John was by nature in his life. And the last year before they went up to the cabin, he and I packed everything very dutifully into the truck to go up. I mean, it was full, the back of the pickup with its canopy. Just before they were about to leave, it dawned on Irma, John, where's the mayonnaise? That jar of mayonnaise? And he said, well, it's in the blue box. And she said, I know, and it's right at the very front. It's going to get too hot. So I was thinking to myself, Irma, buy another one in Prince Albert's. Chuck that one out. Everything had to come out. That's good. Another memory that really stays with me, and this one's more recent, was when John was just before going to hospice. He was on the surgical ward at Kelowna General, and the week previously we'd watched the Riders win in the playoffs, so they would go to the game that if they beat Toronto, they would go to the Grey Cup. And we had gone up, Debbie and I, to watch that game, and John sort of had to bully this guy into changing a Maple Leafs game over to the Riders game up in the common room. So we didn't want to put him through that again. And he did so very politely. We had gone up and the guys watching the game, and John had said, oh, what are you watching? And the guy said, the Maple Leafs. He said, well, what about the football? Oh, no, the Maple Leafs are on. And finally, the third time, yeah, but what about the football? So we took the TV in, and there was about 12 of us in the room watching the game, everybody with their green uniforms, their sweaters on and so on, and a banner put up. And John got so excited, he got out of bed, took his puffer, and sat up and watched the game. And as you may remember, about a minute and a half left, the Riders scored to go ahead. And so the room just erupted in cheer that this had occurred. And then it dawned on us we're in a hospital. So we kind of chuckled and thought that people in the neighboring rooms must have thought a really rich guy just passed away to inherit. But John, of course, as many of our relatives have told us, or some who've lived through it, remember how poor the 30s were and how challenging